Hello and welcome to this video, which is a bit of a change from the norm because this is a first look at a piece of software which is, as of yesterday, has suddenly become available to a lot more people. So this is a kind of thing that could easily pass you by if you're not on the right mailing list or subscribe to this, that and the other. So I thought I'd just bring you a quick look through it pretty much in real time, as I actually only found out about this when I opened up my laptop early this morning and saw an email from Universal Audio. For those of you who don't know, Universal Audio have been around for a long time. They've been responsible for a lot of interesting hardware. So the first sort of DSP accelerator that a lot of people had access to. Behind me on the shelf somewhere, I've actually got a UAD1, which is now totally obsolete because of everything to do with it, really. But they make some high-quality audio interfaces. They were the first people really to do the really sort of high-quality, non-native plugins, as far as I'm aware, although it was a fairly contested market at the time. This product is a DAW, although they didn't used to refer to it as a DAW. It was like a recording solution and this, that, and the other. But it's become free because it was originally something which you could only use with a universal audio interface. So if you didn't have one of them, you wouldn't be able to use it. But as of, I say, yesterday, you can download this and run it on your Mac. And that's what this is about. So this might be interesting to a few people because while it's certainly not Cubase or Bitwig or Pro Tools or anything like that. There's a couple of interesting things in there that I found just with a bit of noodling around that I've been doing today in between painting some ceilings, which has been a very therapeutic exercise. Anyway, let's take a look. So we can see here's the Luna Digital Audio Workstation. Say they didn't used to call it a DAW, but now they do. Basically, you just need to sign up for a UA account. You download the UA account management kind of piece of software, and then you will be able to download it from there. Now, there are two versions of this available. There's the free version, which is apparently totally unfeature restricted, and then there is the paid version, which currently is $200, where it comes with a load of emulations of various pieces of kit. So you get a free trial of a lot of these things initially, and then they will disappear, but all these will stay. But some of the nice things, which we may get a bit of time to look at, will disappear. But that may or may not affect you. But let's take a look. So here we are in Luna. I'm just going to resize it for my screen capture size. So let's just make that fit that a bit better. And as you can see, there's basics, etc. So tutorial videos and so on to follow. Luna is not new. So while it may be new to the freebie community, as it were, it's been around for a few years. So I think these videos are from about 3 years ago. So this is not a brand new product. And hopefully we will see there's some interest here. So let's just make a new project. What I like about this, also, there is a demo session. So you can just click open demo session. You can start playing around with it straight away, find your way around, rather than having to create a load of stuff and then play with it. You can just get into it and start noodling around, which often I think is a really good way of getting into a new piece of software, because you think, oh, some of this is done. And you can start playing around rather than creating everything from scratch. But let's create everything from scratch. So let's call it MTT3. Not going to use a template or anything like that. And let's just create that and get going. So here we have our main window. So we've got two views here. We've got the timeline display and then we've got the mixer display. And this is where we set things up. So here we can see our typical timeline. So we've got time running left to right. We've got a track area, kind of a channel zone area if you're familiar with Cubase 13, and then pretty much in a sort of inspector. So this is where a lot of the editing and playing around with things happen. If you want to go back to the setup window, you can click here and end up back where we started. And then you click this to go back to your project. So you can flip between the two fairly easily. Let's dive straight in. So let's just start by creating a new track, and then from there, doing a bit of recording. So we're not going to create an audio track. We're going to create an instrument track. So I'm going to click the plus here and we're going to create an instrument track. But I don't want to create this audio track. So this is like a list of the tracks we're going to make. We've got this instrument track here. We've got this audio track here. So I'm just going to close that. And we're just going to make an instrument. So it can play any AU-based instrument that you've got. So you can see I've got a list of quite a few here, but we're going to go with shape because that's included with Luna, and it has a reasonably wide range of versatile sounds. So it's a good starting point. So if you haven't got any instruments at all, you could get going and start making some music with this. Probably also noticed we've got a choice of what tape machine we are going through, in air quotes, and what console we are using. We'll see more of that a bit later on, but let's click OK. Create a new instrument. And then on screen, we can see the instrument. So here is the shape instrument. Here is our instrument track, which I'm just going to make a little bigger. And then on the left, we've got the choice of presets. Now, this is highlighted because this, you see the line around this? If I click that again, it's no longer highlighted, but this is a common thing. Often the choices will be made on the left-hand side, which I guess is good for uniformity because it's always in the same place, but sometimes it means your mouse is moving a fair way. As with all of these things, it could be that I'm not using it right. It's literally a few hours into even knowing about this, let alone using it. But let's go with it anyway. So let's look at drums. Let's load up an analog DM08. I wonder what that's supposed to be. And you only have to click once and it's loaded up. We should hopefully be good to go. So from there, let's close the instrument because we've got some editing available to us, but it's not a huge amount. This is much more of a kind of rompler type synth rather than a program from bare waveforms type thing. But as you can probably see, it's pretty varied. There's quite a lot there. You can probably do a lot with it. I've certainly not auditioned a great deal of these sounds, but the ones I have are perfectly serviceable for everyday use. Recording is pretty straightforward in terms of MIDI, so we'll just record enable our track. I'm going to turn the click on. I'm going to set it to 2 bars here by 2-finger tapping and then setting it to 2, but you can see we've got options there for our metronome, which is quite nice. And what I also think is nice is the volume is visible on screen all the time. So that's something that's really nice to be able to get hold of straight away. So let's just record some terrible drums. These will be out of time because I'm monitoring through another machine, so the latency is even worse. And as any regular viewer to the channel will know, I'm a terrible keyboard player. So here goes. And that will do for that. So there we have the recording. Now, the thing that I often find with any new editing software is I want to change the keyboard shortcuts to the same ones as Cubase because they are just burnt into my brain. And changing them often is the first key to being comfortable. I can't find a way to change the keyboard shortcuts on this. I'm not sure whether there is a way, but certainly the preferences page is very sparse. And I couldn't see anything online. So I think we're stuck with the default ones. So you can either move down here and click that, or it's T and R, which is nearly G and H, but not quite. So we can zoom in and out, etc. with that. If we click the Q here, we get the Quantize panel up, and then we can select this. Now it says that it's auto apply is applied, but it seems that it's not unless you move the swing. So if you move swing, as soon as you move a control, you see it all snapped into place. But initially it's not. So it's like auto apply once I change something. But yeah, there you go. That's if we're in quarters, but actually we were in eighths. And you can see that seems to be working. Let's have a listen to this now. Yeah, there we go. Fairly basic. Nice to see these controls here, all fairly sort of piecemeal stuff, but again, something that I think is probably sort of table stakes, but I can remember when Pro Tools didn't even have any of that. Talking of which, if you click here, we get the velocities of the notes. They're all selected at the moment, so if I move this up and down, they will all move in concert with each other, and it kind of remembers while you're doing that, but if you let go, and then manage to deselect everything, then it doesn't remember the offset afterwards. So be careful what you're doing with that. You can obviously change the velocity of individual notes. So I find this a bit clunky. It's probably because I'm not quite used to it, but it doesn't seem to be as straightforward as Cubase because you have to be like absolutely bang on to adjust those. The mouse position alters what's happening. So if you are at the bottom right, then you can resize your part. But if you're further up, then you are in highlight mode. And then if you're at the top, you can move it around in this current mode. So that's reminiscent certainly of my dim recollection of using the Omni tool, I think it was called, in Pro Tools. And again, it's the kind of thing you just have to get used to if you're coming from Cubase, etc., if you want to experiment with this kind of thing. Let's now rename this track, which is pretty simple. You just double click and a pop-up appears. You don't have to move the mouse because it's already selected. So let's just call it drums. And there we go. Next step is going to be to duplicate this. So if we look at the track listing here, we can right click or two finger tap, and we've got some options, including deleting, but we can do duplicate without content, which is quite nice. Maybe Cubase should have something like that. So there's our duplicated drums, and this time we're going to add hats. So I'll call that hats. Take this off of record ready, and then let's add some badly played hats. Right, so once more, you can click the Q, quantize those to 8s, and hopefully, yeah, that looks about what I was intending. So we can turn the click off now. Nice, pretty straightforward so far. Next, let's take a look at importing some audio. So in this quick walkthrough, I'm not going to be recording any audio because I don't have everything set up apart from anything else, but we are just going to import some audio. So this is pretty straightforward. You just do File, Import, and then go and find an audio file. So I'm just going to look for some samples, and let's just pick this one here. We don't get an audition. I'm going to click Open, and there we go. So it's imported this. Now, when I was playing around previously, it asked if I wanted to use the tempo of the imported file. This time it hasn't. Not sure why that is. But let's just change it to 104 to match that. And then just playing this back, we've got much the same. So now I feel we've got enough to start looking at the features in the mixer and things such as buses and effects. So let's go and take a look in the mixer. So here we are in the mixer. Now this is probably, I think this is one of the most interesting parts of this actually, because apart from that, I think it looks quite nice, although it's not resizable in the way that the Cubase mixer is. I like the configurability of this. So this is fairly standard in terms of the signal flow starts at the top and moves down. So we've got our instrument or our input in the case of an audio track. Then we've got some utility sections. So you've got phase reverse and trim, etc. in there, and even delay. Then you've got the tape emulation. So this is trying to make this into a emulation of a tape studio. So we've got the sound of a particular tape machine. You can choose a different one. So if you click here, we could pick Oxide as well as the Studio 800. I'm not sure whether or not this is part of the rental agreement. Let's just take a quick look. Yeah, so as we can see there, Oxide is the one you get to keep. The A800, of course, stumbling on that, is not. So, you know, whether that matters. I think really the basics here are all you get. But of course, you can use any audio units, plugins you've got, as we'll see in a bit. And it's not the end of the world. So while we've got this trial of the Luna Pro bundle and Neve summing, you don't get those if you don't want to pay. They're not insane $200 at the moment, reduced from $400. How convenient. But, you know, you can use it without, but you might fall in love with some of these. So here we are with our tape machine we don't own. So let's swap over to the Oxide instead. So there we go. Our tape machine is now Oxide. Let's just play around with this a bit. So let's just solo the drums. Again, this looks like a physical desk for sure. And let's just play around with this. So we've got our saturation control. You can certainly hear that. So that's quite nice. I quite like the fact you've just got this built in, although I appreciate you could do this on every channel in probably every DAW, but it's quite nice it being effectively a function of it. And then you come down to the console section, which you've got the API Vision. And again, that's something that's just on a 30-day trial, as it were, so you wouldn't have that forever, but we'll see what other alternatives are possible for that. But you can see this is a gate expander and a compressor limiter in there, which is quite nice. And then after that, you can put anything you want. So I think we could change this anyway. So let's just experiment with that. Let's get rid of this. So we can click the little 3-dot menu. Let's remove that. And instead, let's put on one that I actually own. So it's not going to disappear in a while. So let's just put in Fab Filter Q3. So that's in there instead. So we've got an EQ. Now, we don't get the nice console view in there, unfortunately, by the looks of the thing. We can only get these things with those ready. So obviously it does limit you a bit because you need to just click the button here and then get the controls up. So there's a bit to be lost there, which is a bit sad, but there we go. Shouldn't be complaining about everything. Now, we've got in our Vision as well, we've got not only just the input, we've got our dynamics and EQ as well. So clearly, if you were going to replicate that with free plugins, then you'd need to have multiple free plugins in there. But it's nice to have those on screen. Whether or not it's worth $200 here is a different kettle of fish, isn't it? Then we've got sends, our output selection, and then we move down to the channel section itself. So the channel section's, you know, fairly sort of piecemeal kind of thing. If I just play this, just gonna look here. If you right click or 2-finger tap, you can pick 2 different hand modes. So you've got our standard left and right with double click to pick a value, and fortunately that responds to C, or you can go into the complicated mode where you've got individual pan controls for each part of the channel. So it's not a balance control. These are actual pan controls. So we've got left and right. So this is nice for setting up more complicated sound stage settings and making it apparent what's actually happening in there. So quite like that. Again, it all looks like the real deal. And there we go. So we can see nothing is over. So we get an over limit indicator there, which comes up. And as we're playing, we can see all of these fader controls as you would expect. It's all pretty much as you would expect, really. So let's just look at a couple more things, and then I think we'll call it a day for this walkthrough and a first look. First, let's add a bus. Now, effect buses and group channel buses in Cubase lingo are effectively the same thing. It's just the way you route the signal to them. So what we're going to do first is highlight both drums and hats, and then we're going to add a group to them. So we've got drums and hats highlighted, and under mixing, I can do create bus. We'll call it drum bus. Route from selected. Yeah, the output, etc. So that's just picking these. So these 2 should, I think, go straight there. So let's just collect that. Yeah, now you can see these are going to the drum bus. We've got our drum bus there. So if I play, I can solo all the drums, etc. Again, we've got all the standard kind of controls with our Neve summing amplifier. Again, not played around with that. I'm sure it's wonderful. You have to pay for it. Let's move on from that. Now, if you want to create an effects channel, it's kind of the same thing, but you just change the way that you do it. So all you do is do create bus, but route from selected, I'm going to do none. Okay, so you can do it from send one as well, but I'm going to do it from none for the time being to make it up in the way that I want. So we'll call this reverb with a extra E in there. So there's our reverb there, and then we can put a reverb actually in it. So again, I'm just going to put in the Pro R. Let's put it on something medium drum room on 100%. So that will be that. And then on our sends, we can just choose them. So for our drums, let's do them individually. So this one can go to reverb, that one can go to reverb, etc. And we can also have it with our bass going there as well. And then you've just got level controls and phase control, which would again be nice in Cubase, and mute, which is quite nice. So it just works. So you can hear, because we had that soloed. So let's just get that just low enough. We can got the classic thing where when we solo it, we're not actually hearing anything, which is a bit strange, but it's, I like the way this looks. You know, the metering on each send, etc. You can see that, you know, we can see how much we're sending on that. I think that's a really neat little touch. So there is automation present here. You can see read. It's pretty straightforward, I think. So we'll just go back to the beginning of our in quotes session, which is all 4 bars long. And as is often the way, we can just click a mode. So if we just click touch, if I just play this, you see I move that there, I put it on touch, I'm going to put it back on read, and then if we play it back, it's going to play that back. So you can see my automation is there. And then if we go back to the other view, we can see on the hats track. So if we click view, we can look at anything. Yeah, how strange. That didn't appear there, did it? But there we go. Going back to it with view volume, and it's appeared. So I'm not entirely sure what occurred there. But yeah, we've got automation. Again, you've got editing. I've yet to get into the editing. Hopefully I'll have time to do a bit more on this and actually delve into it a bit more and see what is available. But certainly you can do kind of the old-fashioned actual touch and alteration of physical controls. And I know this does integrate with external controllers. Now, another nice thing which I've noticed in this very brief time is the saving of parts. So if you save... So another nice thing that I've noticed is the way that this is saved. So initially you save your project. So you probably remember that long time ago, I saved this as MTT3. But when you click save, do Command S, we actually save a bookmark, and it's different versions of this track saved in different places. So if I do after automation, you can open a different version. So we do open, and you can see we've got these 3 different versions available, which I really like because I do a lot of this in Cubase and I just increment a new version, call it mix 2, mix 3, mix, etc. The problem is then your recent menu is just 15 different versions of the same thing. I don't want that. I want to know the project and then the different versions separately. I think this handles this really nicely. It's amazing the things you find in other software, isn't it? So that's a quick first look at Universal Audio's Luna. Now, you may be asking, well, why would I learn another DAW? I think there's a couple of reasons for this. Firstly, I think it's a good idea just to play around with these kind of things because it makes you realize what you do know in the software that you use, but it can also make you think about working in different ways, or maybe what could be improved, etc., or how you would change your workflow if you were going to go back to your original one. I would, if I was doing an on-site recording of, let's say, 16, tracks of live musicians in the near future, I would probably use this just to see how it gets on, because I think it looks like it would be quite a nice, just straight recording solution. It's definitely not a replacement for Cubase if you're producing lots of instrument-based music, this, that, and the other, because I don't think the MIDI editing is up to it. Other areas of it seem to be, and certainly for audio recording, which is what it originally seemed to be aimed at rather than being a DAW, just seems to be really good for that kind of thing. It's free. Obviously, they're trying to get you to buy the full package, because that's going to be actually seeing them some money. I can't believe things like this exist, because it's an immense undertaking creating something like this. It's a phenomenally complicated piece of software. It's probably not without its bugs. I say I've just spent a few hours with it today and decided to show you that because I thought it was interesting, and it's current because it's literally the first day that it's been out. But it's not the first day that Luna has been out, so I wouldn't expect to find all those kind of very early release bugs that you find in things when they are brand new, because in some ways this is quite a mature product. It's not a replacement for Cubase. It's probably not a replacement for Pro Tools. It's certainly not a replacement for Ableton Live or Bitwig or those kind of things, or Fruity Loops. But if you're going to be just doing some recording in the traditional manner, and you effectively want to emulate having a tape machine and a desk and do your recording, have some automation and be done with it, and the automation works pretty well as far as what I've seen earlier on, then this is worth checking out. Obviously, it's more worth checking out because it's free. It is Mac only. It's always been Mac only as far as I'm aware. And certainly this is Mac only for this free release. So that obviously limits it. I don't know what the percentage is of people with Mac. I think it's about 10% of overall users. And it's more in terms of music users. But I wouldn't say it was 50-50. But I think it's certainly worth a try. It might point you in new directions in what you're doing. Or you might find that for some jobs, it's what you want to use, because it simplifies things, the workflow is nice, it looks nice on screen, and it seems to be pretty interesting. As ever, hope you found this video useful, and we'll see you again soon for more Music Tech Tuition.